the Evolution Security Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast, also known as the EvoSec Podcast. And this is, once again, the Tactical Twins, Aaron and Eric Davis. Now, Eric, there was something cool we got to mention from one of our mentors, and he referred to us as the Tactical Twins. And we got to give a little bit of story. Sometimes people may not know what we have meant by that, and it's definitely tongue in cheek because you've got some tactical training. I've got probably 15 minutes of tactical training. Now that's an understatement, but there goes my dadgum phone. Talk about tactics.
Yeah, I roll with it.
And so, but the Tactical Twins, how that name came up, that was the name for our band. Do you recall that?
Oh, yeah.
We were trying to think up a name for the band for the music on the show that we recorded, and that was the band name, and it just kind of stuck. We kind of took it further than just the music, but that technically is our band name, the Tactical Twins.
It's time to do some new music. I think that's it's interesting because Carl Wren, he's a musician himself, and
he's a great musician too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the point, is that it was cool, that Carl shouted out to us on. So his blog.
Mention that. I didn't say that fully.
Yeah, and so that's where I noticed. I was just reading all the blogs I like to catch up on. I get a lot of information off of the blogs that I have in an RSS feed, and I noticed he had a secondary AAR or bonus blog post about TacCon 23, and he just happened to put at the end of it that some of the shows, including Lee Weems, Lee Weems put out 2 shows about it, really good shows. Shout out to Lee out there, and again, Carl had posted our show on there as well. So very, very humbled from the support from Carl, and we certainly appreciate it. And that's kind of where that little bit of an explanation of our tongue-in-cheek nickname, where that comes from. And so, yeah, cool, man. Yeah, I was looking forward to this show.
Hey,
Aaron, go ahead.
Okay, the whole twin thing, you literally beat me about 3 seconds to saying that very thing. I got home and started kind of getting my gear ready to do this, and I thought, man, I'm looking forward to chatting with Eric. We've both been so busy, and especially you. It's been hard to touch base as much as we do. Audience, you should know that usually every day there's at least 5 or 6 texts between the two of us.
Oh yeah,
if not many more, and that's of course every day. So, but Eric's been ignoring me the last several days, and I'm getting pissed off about that. Says, Aaron, I'm flying all over the country. Give me a break, dude. So, real quick before we dig in, so all of a sudden, man, you've been traveling a lot again. What's the deal with that?
Well, as I mentioned on the show before, again, I still work for the Army as a civilian. A lot of our audience knows that. Nothing sexy. But I was one of those individuals that refused to get vaccinated. And what was done to all of us that wouldn't get vaccinated, we were grounded. That came all the way down from the White House, through the Pentagon, and they grounded anybody who wasn't vaccinated, which, in and of itself was good for my jujitsu. I got to spend a lot more time. I would argue I may have not gotten my purple belt had it not have been for that kind of blessing in disguise. That's not necessarily true, but it made it easier because I was able to train a lot harder. But what it had, this travel I've been on quite a bit recently has kind of hurt my jujitsu. So it's a double-edged sword. Yet at the same time, Aaron, a big reason I've been traveling a lot is because I'm trying to give my guys a break. Put myself on more of these TDY missions because those guys deserve a break. And none of those
has that been kind of a deal where, because you haven't been able to travel, a lot of your guys have had to travel in your stead?
Well, travel more, but just full disclosure, in my particular position, I'm only supposed to put myself on missions kind of at not necessarily last resort, but the journeyman folks under me, I'm supposed to use them first. But I had two other gentlemen in my region that were also unvaccinated. So there was 3 of us total. And so, yeah, it certainly affect op tempo. And so, yeah. And not only that, man, I'll be honest with you. I like traveling. I like doing my job on the road. I don't want to be gone all the time because, again, as I mentioned, it affects my jiu-jitsu and in some cases can affect my shooting. But I also enjoy doing my job. It makes me feel more, I guess, more self-worth, in my daily job.
A little bit of Maslow. I keep saying that wrong. Maslow, pardon me.
Yep. Yeah,
that whole
absolutely.
Self-actualization, top of the pyramid.
Yeah. And I actually, because my job is a technical job, I get the most technical work done on the road versus being, at my note, because I'm at my desk a lot more when I'm in garrison, so to speak. But yeah, so that's an explanation, like you say. So you were wondering why I was on the road so much, huh?
Oh, it just definitely picked up a little bit. Now, Eric, are you drinking water there?
What, this here?
Yeah.
It's just some tea, brother.
Tea?
Oh, what you got there?
A little bit of Coupe F5.
Got a little Jocko tea.
Well, I'm probably not drinking the best stuff for me, but hey, dude, this is man, these Okies, they've turned out some really good beer in that.
It is good.
Hey, and I don't want to take us on a tangent. It's popular to make fun of people that like IPAs.
Yeah, one of our mentors and buddies, Scott Jedlinski, likes to make fun of us for that.
Does he?
Yeah, man, he does.
It's a full flavored, thick beer, man. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. I think Scott sees it as hippie beer, whatever he said, hipster beer.
Yeah, and that's what I see is it's a hipster thing. I'm not a hipster. I'm the furthest thing from a hipster.
Well, and I think folks also, I don't think I was really into IPAs until I lived in the Pacific Northwest,
man.
Yeah, I don't.
Sledgehammer from The Rock, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was great.
Who was the brewery that made Sledgehammer?
I think is it Fishtail? I think it was.
Well, bro, and then in Portland, Hops Urban Brewery, Survival Stout. I have yet to find a stout that's good. Hey, Saul, if you're listening, my buddy Saul that builds my guitars, dude, if you can pick up some of that Survival Stout and ship it my way, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, that is good stuff. Well, excuse me, Aaron. Ever since I had this, uh, like my third, I guess, upper respiratory infection that I got over about a month and a half ago, man, I just every now and I just cough a little more. But
Yeah, dude, there's allergens going on here, so I'm kind of
oh
coughing a
yeah,
little.
that was one of the things I was doing this morning. Took the day off to get a bunch of stuff done around the house, including mowing the lawn and getting all the weed eating done, taking care of taking care of the yard. So yeah, I'm no doubt dealing with a little bit of pollen. But Aaron, I kind of think it might be a good time to segue into one of our fun topics.
Let's hit it, man.
You know, I have begun a shotgun adventure. And the precipice of that adventure, it kind of started a little while ago, and I'll namely talk about episode 90 with Eric Gelhaus. Now, granted, you and I had been talking about closing the loop on shotguns before that, and that's why we asked Eric on, because he's an expert at shotgun, and so we invited him on, and he gave us some very, very compelling reasons why you should probably at least own a shotgun and know how to run it well. And one of those is the political environment.
Mm-hmm.
You may, and again, Eric, even though he voted for Nancy Pelosi there in
Yeah, he
San
sure did.
Francisco, he's gonna get
Dude,
after us because
offline, man, he told me he loved Nancy Pelosi. He's just mad because we keep telling the truth.
yeah, but full disclosure, so nobody really thinks that. Of course, Eric despises Nancy Pelosi. I'll just, but again, razzing our becoming buddies in this realm. We of course had to do that sometimes. But anyway, but excuse me, certainly one good political reason, and this isn't going to make me change my thought process on using an AR per se, but if you use an AR in self-defense, for some reason we see it all the time. They're always looking, the left's always looking, the media is always looking for a negative story to use against ARs. And using a shotgun in self-defense, obviously it's not innocuous, but it nearly is. It's like, okay, yeah, they use the shotgun in self-defense. That's
Hey, bro,
common.
it's Joe Biden's weapon of choice.
Yeah, it is. Even though I bet he can't even hit much with even a shotgun. But anyway, I just like to.
Well, you don't have
say
to aim a shotgun, dude.
Yeah, exactly. That's what folks like Biden think. And anybody that understands the shotgun, especially if you're running proper ammunition, let's say double aught buck, and by the way, I'm having trouble finding flight control 8 pellet federal
Bro,
flight.
that's unless you want to talk about it right now. That was one of my questions was about your loads that you're getting. You
Yeah,
want to
so
talk?
we can talk about that here in just a minute, but yeah, I'm having trouble finding it. But anyway, if you're using, say, flight control, you most assuredly have to aim. And folks that think that, I just point and shoot. Well, again, you got 8 or 9 pellets of 30 caliber BBs or pellets. You own every single one of those,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's
Yeah.
something folks got to think about. I mean, if you just wing somebody just because you pointed and aimed, you're still launching. If you miss with, let's say, 2 or 3 pellets, man, those are some serious, dangerous pellets launched out there that you own. So be careful about thinking that way. Not that I'm an expert at shotgun, and that's kind of where this goes. And I'll grab this real quick. It's not that it's the best picture here in video, but this is my Beretta A300 Ultima Patrol, which is kind of, for lack of a better term, it's kind of like a junior 1301. It uses a different action, not as fast, like as far as the blink. This is just a standard gas operated bolt system. I'm not going to claim to know a whole lot about it, but the one thing that it does do is it already has this extended magazine tube, so it's an 8+1, and or is it 7+1? I, well, I may be saying on the air showing my ignorance, but anyway, the fact that it's got an extended tube already is an upgrade that most folks have to do to the 1301s.
Hey,
And
bro, what model is it again?
this is a Beretta A300 Ultima Patrol. So it's got a 19, I think it's a 19.1 inch barrel. And I tell you, man, this handguard is grippy, man. Like I heard that on some of the reviews, but I'm telling you, man, this grip is very, very aggressive. So
Now, so I'm sitting here looking up something. You're talking about which grip on the? Are you talking about the?
So can you see? It kind of looks like stippling here.
Oh yeah,
right there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is straight up aggressive, man. They've got it on the stock here as well. So yeah, man, and kind of oversized controls here, real easy to run the bolt forward and smoothed out loading port here, real easy to load. And my son and I, we ran
bro, it's a 7+1.
Okay, thank you for looking that up, because I think I had the 8 because that's the total.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, so the internet ninjas don't get after us.
Ninjas.
But yeah, I mean, again, this is new adventure for me. I'm pretty excited about it. I've got some changes to make.
So, bro, what were you saying about you and your son? I saw some cool footage of you and your boy running some good drills with that stuff.
Yeah, we had absolute blast this last Easter Sunday, and Nick and I just decided we were going to go out and run pistol, carbine, and shotgun. And my son had never shot a shotgun before, so he's pretty excited about it. But I will say,
did he by chance bring his rifle?
Oh yeah, yeah. Cool. He typically will bring it with him. His BCM. We always tell the joke when we gifted that to him a while back, is that most sons don't get a BCM for their first rifle, so he should be thankful for it.
Mm-hmm. They get a Smith & Wesson M&P.
Which isn't bad. I told him he should have gotten I told him he should have gotten a Franken gun, or like I was going to mention a company, but I'm not going to do it. So, but of course, I wanted him to have quality, from the get go. Because
and I got to be clear that the Smith & Wesson M&P ARs are some great guns if you're on a budget. They're about as good as you can get if you're on a budget.
Yeah, they do run fine. I got buddies.
I mean, just out of the box, they've got a lot of features. You can go from minimum features to quite a few features, and they're not a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think that is the point. Since we're on that subject, the M&P 15 is that it gets the job done. All joking aside, but yeah, so my son and I went out and ran the new shotgun, and man, it runs like butter. I've not shot a 1301 myself. I'm looking forward to making a comparison. I understand that the action runs a bit faster. Like, I mean, it may be quite a bit faster, like maybe 30% faster. I'm not sure, but again, I can't run this shotgun faster than recoil recovery, at least at this point. But yeah, it shoots real smooth, minimal recoil because of the recoil buffer system, the fact that it's gas operated.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, Eric. So I'm ill-experienced in shotguns, and the only shotguns I've ever shot are pump action. So with the recoil system and recoil buffer, you're getting a little bit less recoil from that, huh?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to what we kind of started alluding to. I haven't got my defensive ammo squared away yet. I've kind of been holding out because I want the 8 pellet federal flight control. That's just from my research and from our mentors
Bro,
mentioning
have
that.
you hit ammoseek.com yet? Just
Yeah.
curious.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Still having a hard time, huh?
Yeah, I hadn't seen them on there yet, and I'm not seeing them on Lucky Gunner either. So, and I went to a local shop, and it was funny.
Boo.
Yeah, now let me be careful. Let me back up a second because I meant to mention this wasn't
I'm
at
just
the shop.
talking about ammo, man. I always get ticked off when I go to get ammo at stores, man.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't. I guess it's just a market thing, and I'll just finish what I was about to say. Is that I looked at the owner of the shop and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for federal flight control 12 gauge, preferably 8 pellet." And he looked at me like, "Huh?" Like, "You think I'm gonna have that stuff here?" That's kind of was his response. And I guess
And
I
this,
kind of get
what
it.
is this? Just a store you went into, or was it the store that you purchased your shotgun from?
Negative. No, wasn't the same place. And I should, at the time, I just wasn't ready to ask about. I don't know. I was kind of ready to get back to the house because we had, of course, company. So I wasn't going to push it at that point. I figured, excuse me, I figured I could find a source online, get it ordered, and have it at the house. But no, that wasn't the case. So, but just real quick, because I mentioned it to him that I would say something about it. But Mike at Rudy's Gun Shop in Fayetteville is where I purchased this shotgun. Shout out to him. He
Cool.
and his crew there were super helpful, great guys, and man, they got an awesome shop. And this shotgun's been hard to come by. I know a lot of buddies have been looking for them, and Ken, my buddy Ken, shout out to him. I asked him, I was like, "Hey man, talk to your sources, see if you can get me this shotgun." And sure enough, a few days later, he said that Mike at Rudy's got one in. I'm like, "Hey, I'm coming to pick it up." And what I will tell this story too is I said, "Yeah." He said, "When do you want to go down and pick it up?" I said, "Let's do it tomorrow." And I was just excited about the shotgun being in. And I didn't think about the fact that I had to travel the next day. And now it was a short trip, but yeah, I'm driving home from work. I'm like, crap, I'm actually traveling tomorrow. And just grabbing a rental car and going somewhere for a couple of days. And I text Ken, said, "Hey man, I feel like a jerk. I have to travel tomorrow, just a turn and burn trip. Can he hold on to it until Friday?" And sure enough, Mike was cool with it. So shout out to Mike. I'm definitely going to continue to give him my business. So good shop.
Maybe
So,
I can grab one of those from Mike sometime soon.
yeah, cool. Yeah, man. If we can give him business, then all the better. So yeah, again, shout out to Mike at Rudy's. Thanks a lot, buddy. So yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on the shotgun? Honestly, have you still been thinking about closing that loop?
Yeah, it's funny, bro. You and I kind of think I don't want to throw you for a loop, but you know what? The next thing I want, I think, is a freaking lever action.
Yeah, man. So you mentioned lever action. You know who's a big fan of lever action, right?
Man, I
Is
was seeing.
Lee Weems is.
Oh, okay, need to hit him up. That's a cool thing about having friends like Lee. I can text him, and I'm sure he'll shoot back a few paragraphs about what I should get into. But no, I all seriousness though, that's just the first thing that came to mind. But no, I definitely do want a shotgun. I mean, it's just something I'm not very knowledgeable about. I can run the manual of arms for an AR and a pistol, and I just rely on that. But I certainly want to square up some different platforms.
Yeah, and that's a good response. And again, like I mentioned, I, I for a long time, I'm just going to say right up front, is I'm like pistol and carbine, have a good hunting rifle. I have a precision rifle. You do as well. But even those aren't that big of a deal to us. Not near as much as being able to have a good and run a carbine and a pistol.
Yeah, I
They're
mean my 308 bolt gun, I love that thing, but it gets ran about once every 6 months. Now, after I get my neck fixed here in a few weeks, I talked to one of our. You need to check your text, but I talked to one of our instructor friends about hitting one of his classes next year. Tell
oh,
you
I saw it earlier.
the first class I think I
Mr.
want to
Kyle
take.
DeFore.
Yes, the first class I want to take from him, it's got to be either long range rifle or long range carbine. So, because that's one of the problems. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but one of the problems with my neck is I can't shoot prone very well at all, or my hands just go numb and my neck starts bugging me. But so, yeah, saying that, yeah, I've got a great bolt gun, but it kind of sits in the safe because I'm grabbing my pistol first and then AR if I can get to it.
Well, and again, Aaron, that's kind of what I was alluding to, is that this new shotgun adventure is about covering as much diversity in the platforms I have and being able to run them. And I think to that extent, I think I also still need to end up replacing my old 590 Mossberg or an 870. I think I need to continue to train on that as well, running a
So,
pump.
bro,
So yeah.
do you so now let me ask the question. So you were out of a shotgun until grabbing this recently, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't owned any shotguns until picking this one up. I sold a 590 A1 many years ago, and I'm still mad at myself over selling that. And frankly, I sold it to help purchase my first AR. So
Oh,
I
I
guess in
remember
a
when you
way,
got that first AR.
yeah. Yeah. So that was a big, I guess at that point, I mean, we didn't have that much money, so it was probably a proper decision. But so I
Well,
still
Tell
I still go ahead.
I'm interrupting. I was going to say, why don't you tell us about how you have that set up, um, and then I'll ask a couple questions.
So Aaron, I would say that it's not really quite set up just yet. But what I am running on here is a Blue Forest Vickers sling that I honestly pulled off of one of my other ARs for now, just because I wanted to play with the sling, and it's residing there now. I need to decide on a light. I have several options. I've got multiple lights that I've used over the last few years that I think could work here, but I
Do
haven't
you have
made
any
that decision yet.
ideas? What do you have in mind?
So there's a couple of the Streamlight offerings that have pressure switches that I'm running on a couple of my ARs that work really well. I'll probably start there. Um, but I'm kind of going back towards maybe running a Scout, a Surefire Scout. We'll see. But that is one of the aspects of this, is that it does come with some M-Lock already
Yeah, I
populated,
noticed that.
which
Yeah.
which the other, I'm not, to my knowledge, the 1301 I don't think comes with M-Lock readily available on the stock. So but it also, we've got a Picatinny rail there. Also, and I'll digress in a second here. It's got a fiber optic front sight, which runs really good. When Nick and I were shooting it, but I will likely be putting an optic on it.
Bro,
pretty soon.
that was my other question. If you were going to put an optic on it,
Yeah. So, excuse me. It'll probably be a Holson. I
Yeah.
might even put an EPS on it. We'll see. But then that's probably gonna make me want an EPS for one of my other pistols. But
bro, I've got an extra EPS hanging around here just in case.
Oh, so what are you saying? You want to sell it to me?
We'll see.
I'm kidding, bro. That's for your stuff, man.
Nah, bro. I was thinking about that the other day, that you might need an EPS.
Yeah, I probably need to.
Yeah, for searching for so long and having a hard time getting those, I'm kind of keeping it to the chest that I've got two of them in this. Well, one on this one and then one in my safe. So,
well, to kind of close the conversation and segue into our next subject, but yeah, so certainly need a light on this. I've got a sling at least for now. Having a sling and a light, I think, from our mentors, and I think
so. Will a sling, a light, and then an optic round it all off?
Yeah, I think that's
and that proper flight control, right?
Now, I will say this: it was kind of cool. Beretta sent, you see this loop that's on the side?
Yeah.
So they sent some M3 loop that I could place on the side. So now I haven't decided on what sidecars I want yet, or side cards, I should say. But there's a couple of companies that I'm looking at that I think I'm going to settle on, so I can start running the ammo on the side too. So yeah, that'll round it out. A light, a sling, which I've got, and the side card will be the preliminary, and then I'll eventually, maybe here real soon, put an optic on it.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's fun, man. Again, just to mention back when Nick and I were out getting our train on, or get our practice on, man, he and I had a blast. We set up, for lack of a better term, we set up some kind of IDPA-esque stages for pistol, ran some carbine drills, and then set up a couple of 3-gun little stages.
Yeah, I saw that. Look like we're watching Keanu Reeves at Terran Tactical.
That's funny. Incidentally, Nick said that's what he was joking about, imitating Keanu Reeves. It's funny you mentioned that. Man,
hey,
shout out to my son.
Yeah, shout out to Nick, buddy. Miss you. Anybody knows Keanu Reeves, we'd love to have him on the show. Point him our way.
Yeah, that dude puts the work in. The jiu-jitsu mats, the judo mats, putting in the work.
I didn't intend to go off on a tangent, but the guy runs guns, and Eric, you can at least tell really knows how to handle firearms is Chris Pratt.
Oh yeah.
Dude, you don't run around in a movie handling firearms like him without training.
Yeah, and I thought I heard was it that he went to, I might speak out of line, but I could be corrected. I think he did a lot of his training out at Thunder Ranch with Clint Smith, maybe some at Tactical Response. I do know for certain that Jack Carr has, because that's how I learned of Jack Carr, the author of Terminal List that we're kind of speaking about. I learned about Jack Carr's Terminal List book from James Yeager.
So now, speaking of, they're working on a sequel to the Terminal List, right, with Chris Pratt?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. True Believer is the second book.
Cool.
And I tell on myself, I don't like audiobooks as a first read, because I just don't see it as reading. You know, I'm not at all being a snob. I don't mean it that way. But I just prefer reading a tangible book. Now I'll read it. I have a Kindle. Sometimes I put some of my books on Kindle because it's small and it's easy to travel with. But one of the things I have certainly grown to love is if I've read the book already, I do like listening to it again. Like especially right now, as we're getting close to Only the Dead, I think is the name of Jack Carr's newest book. Is I'm listening to all the other books before reading that book, just because it's fun, you know.
Cool.
And so I've been listening to True Believer, the book that you're mentioning. So cool.
Let's take a quick break to mention Tenacor, who we're very honored to have as a sponsor of our show. They are the most innovative holster and carry solution producer in the market. Now, my current carry rig is a Glock 48 and a Cartoon 3. I also carry an extra mag and an Abdo AIWB mag pouch. And then, of course, there's the awesome Zero belt. Now, the Cartoon 3 is actually designed well for both appendix or hip inside the waistband carry. The key is the multiple ways you can adjust the camming bar, the cant, and the ride height. This allows it to be actually equally suited for both carry methods. The Abdo mag pouch is equally adjustable and thoughtfully designed. Now, the Zero belt. If you don't need a holster, at least grab a Zero belt. There is nothing like it, period. Now, I've just mentioned a few items here, but they have much, much more. And lastly, Tenacor wants you to be satisfied. If you aren't satisfied, they'll refund your money and pay to even have the product sent back to them. You can't lose, so go to Tenacor.com for carry gear that's as good as it gets.
So, Aaron, I'm sure you saw the conviction of Daniel Perry this last week, right?
Sure did. And, you know, there's lots of conversations about it going on right now. But yeah, I think it'd be fun for us. Not fun. I think it would be apropos for us to go ahead and talk about it.
Well, and Aaron, I'm going to be the first to admit that I remember when that happened, because it stuck out in my brain. This Uber driver defends himself, you know, driving downtown Austin during BLM riots, and immediately, Aaron, we will have a bias. You know, it's natural, human nature, until we hear the facts. Now, so he was absolutely convicted this last week of murder, right? And I'll say, man, when I first heard that, I was like, man, that's bullshit. How is that possible? And then I heard that he was originally not charged, and it took a whole year before a grand jury brought charges. You know, the grand jury was paneled by Jose Garza, who's a Soros funded DA. More on that here in just a minute. And I just immediately said, hey, man, it sounded, all the evidence that I had heard thus far sounded cut and dry. But Aaron, it kind of turns out that maybe it wasn't. Now, I want to caveat this whole discussion. Aaron and I are not lawyers. We are not experts in legal commentary. We're just talking about this case. We're not offering any legal opinions on this whatsoever, just in case, you know, folks question this, but we're making observations. Now, it may very well be that the crutch of this case, it pivoted on whether or not, now the person that unfortunately was shot, you know, was Garrett Foster. It could very well be that Garrett Foster actually pointed his AK at Daniel Perry. But what's unfortunate is, as Andrew Branca always talks about, All that matters is the evidence that's presented to the jury.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, there was no evidence presented to the jury that he actually pointed that rifle. And so, just to give a little summary, is excuse me, this past Friday, April 7th, 2023, Daniel Perry was found guilty in the 2020 murder of Garrett Foster during a Black Lives Matter protest in Austin. The confrontation between the two men occurred as Perry was driving his Uber vehicle amongst a crowd of protesters in the street. And while Foster was among the protesters, carrying an AK-47 on a sling, which in Texas is legal, I'll just add that. The rifle-armed Foster approached the driver's side door of Perry's car. Perry rolled down his window and shot at Foster 5 times with a pistol, striking him with 3 rounds, effectively killing Foster instantly. Perry would flee the scene a short distance, during which another protester would fire 3 shots, striking Perry's vehicle. Perry then called 911 and was shortly thereafter approached by and spoke with responding officers. Now, one of the things that I'll bring out here is I was curious what Andrew Branca's opinion was on this, and several others, I might add, and Moss Ayoob as well. And it just so happens that I found both of their opinions on it. And Andrew Branca, his statement was that the conviction was legally sound. Now, I'm not going to put words in Andrew's mouth whatsoever. Andrew's is a solid professional legal expert lawyer in self-defense,
especially about self-defense.
Yeah, but his point during all of this is that, hey, based on the evidence, it appears that it's legally sound. And the biggest reason is that number one, there were witnesses that stated that Foster never pointed the rifle. Perry had no witnesses to state the contrary. And the only evidence of the rifle, there's a picture circulating where the angle of the rifle was not pointed at him.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I before anybody that's emotional about this particular case gets mad or upset, I'm not at all saying that at one point he didn't point it. But again, that there's no evidence of that. And I'll add that I saw a video, and it was apparently it was video from the investigators interrogating him, or maybe not interrogating, discussing it with him. And by the way, like Andrew Branca brought out, he did all this in the present, without legal counsel with him, which is a no-no altogether. But Aaron, he said something interesting with his own words. The investigator asked him, he said, how did Foster point the rifle at you? And he's standing up and he's kind of, he's like, well, he kind of stuttered a little bit, and he almost made the motion that he went like this. And he's like, but I just didn't want to let him point it at me.
Oh.
So I think that's a statement that's admitted in evidence. So Aaron, doesn't that bring in a little bit of doubt?
Oh yeah.
That was in his own words.
You're educating me on this, because this didn't get back. I mean, I remember the case also when it actually happened, but I'm getting up to speed on this, as you're talking about it. And, just this week it's been in the press.
And Aaron, that is the bottom line. His whole self-defense argument really pivoted on whether or not the rifle was ever pointed at him,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately the evidence doesn't support it. And I'll say it one more time. I'm not saying it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no actual corroborating evidence that Foster did point the rifle at him. So it at
And
least
Perry could have misspoke. He
he could
could have
absolutely.
misspoke in the questioning. That's why it's recommended by Andrew and Musashi Ayoob and other experts that you state you're going to fully cooperate. But I've just went through a traumatic event, and I need some time to gather my thoughts, and I need to speak to you with my attorney. Now, that's not a perfect way to state how it would go, but you can't just, you could incriminate yourself actually with misremembering what happened, because literally you just went through a traumatic event and you can gather your thoughts better. I mean, just like they don't make police officers give a statement in a shooting that they're involved with for at least 24 hours, and I think a lot of it's 48 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely not advisable in the mental state right after a traumatic incident to try to recall what happened, which, and again,
And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to use bias and point doubt on that too. I'm just saying, hey, that's a possibility too,
which we're
right?
going to talk here in a minute, that you mentioned that what is the best way to make a statement, and if you say anything at all, which we'll talk about that here in a second. But Aaron, here's another issue. And again, this is why we're using this as a cautionary discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is be careful what you say online, because will it will likely be used in court, right? And in many cases, this shouldn't be. And this is coming from other lawyers that I've researched in this case. Is it shouldn't be admissible, but all that has to happen is a prosecutor asks for it to be admitted, and a judge say okay, and which is what happened in this case. So these are a few
Wow.
of the things, excuse me, that he said in
That
a
Perry
face.
said. That Perry
Yes,
said.
so this is quoting from Perry himself on Facebook. Quote, "I might have to kill a few people on my way to work," end quote.
What?
Yep. And then in a video showing protesters being shot in San Antonio earlier in the year, Perry also wrote, quote, "Glad someone finally did something," end quote. So again, we might even think that's a, well, let me walk that back a second. I personally, number one, wouldn't be saying some stupid crap like that online, right? You might think that, hey, man, if protesters were displaying lethal force against somebody in the crowd, or in that area, that somebody defended themselves. But I don't know that it's best to think almost in that
Well,
kind of
that just sounds
bravado.
really flippant and
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to be legalistic here. I didn't see that, and I'm just amazed. Now, maybe some outlets like CNN and MSNBC, etc., are talking about that. But when you hear media sources, a lot, just to be frank, that I listen to, I've not seen any of that. So, I mean, thanks for digging that stuff up, because that now, it stinks that could be admissible as evidence, because it doesn't have anything to do with the case itself, but it certainly could give the jurors an idea of what state of mind he could have been in when he shot that protester.
Yeah, and all that has to happen is that in the jury's eyes, that there was a disproving of his self-defense case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that legally it doesn't have to have absolute certainty, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm using Andrew's words here, and I will
Andrew
say
Branca.
this, Andrew Branca. Thank you, Aaron. We keep each other straight there. And by the way, you know, I did. And that's why I'm not quoting a bunch of this, because this was behind Andrew's paywall, and I commend people to go out and support Andrew Branca and at least join the low membership on his website to be able to get access to more of his commentary, because Andrew Branca is putting out, I guess you could say, life-saving information, but more to the point is keeping you out of jail, and setting your mind straight. So, which I've got his book, Law of Self-Defense, here, which we're going to talk a little bit about here in a second. But yeah, it's unfortunate that the evidence didn't support his self-defense claim, and maybe again, Foster, maybe he did point it, but unfortunately the jurors at least had, some doubt that his defense claim was accurate, and to my understanding, the jurors deliberated for 17 hours, which means that there was some absolute doubt, whether or not he was
or you mean not
guilty.
absolute doubt, but there were some people that definitely were not sure, but that needed to be convinced that otherwise.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you, because again, we are talking about a legal case here, so my words matter, at least in representing it. But yeah, there were certainly some jurors that were probably on the fence of whether or not it was legally justified or not. So yeah, but I again, that's why we're bringing this up, because, and I repeat myself, I was knee-jerk reaction, like, what in the hell? How in the world?
Same here.
Because I just saw what was on the news and what I read, a few years ago when it first happened. This other evidence didn't come to light until the trial. So with that said, Aaron, do you have any more comments on that?
Well, to me, it begs the question, which the Texas governor Abbott has talked about pardoning him.
Yep.
Now, my question, right, is I understand that there is a pardon board that has to review this and has to forward pardoning documents or whatever form that takes before he can actually pardon him. Now, can Governor Abbott just pardon him because it's some hot button case, and he
Aaron,
thinks it's wrong, or what do you know about that? Because
Aaron,
I'm asking the question.
So Aaron, again, not that I'm an expert in law and especially in Texas law, but to my understanding is that at least in Texas, the governor does not have plenary power.
Okay.
To just pardon, which other states do, and also, like, the president of the United States has plenary power to just say, "Hey, I'm pardoning this person." So the board has to review it and recommend it before the governor of Texas. That is my understanding, before the governor of Texas can actually sign the pardon. So again, if anybody in our audience knows otherwise, and I've got that wrong, please let us know at crew@evosec.org, our email. So, if for some reason I've got that wrong, let me know.
Yeah, speaking of, to our audience, if there's any questions you have, if you think that we've got something wrong, or that we've got something wrong and you want to help us out, please email us. because
Man, I would love to have more interaction with our audience when we get stuff wrong, because we do.
yeah.
You know, we're but in some instances, it would be nice if folks want to maybe counter something we've said, and we can discuss it. So yeah, I'm glad we mentioned that. Well, Aaron, here's another. Again, I stated that Andrew Branca believes that the conviction is legally sound, and I saw, and I just happened to be reading some of my blogs, and I saw one that Ayoob had posted about another incident, but somebody in the comments asked him what he thought about this case, and this is what Ayoob said: "There was a solid case of self-defense there. Unfortunately, the defendant's poorly chosen social media comments beforehand hurt him badly, as did his inconsistent account of the incident and its prelude. The governor seems inclined to issue a pardon. We shall see." So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because when, again, in his own words, right, saying, okay, I just didn't want him to point it at me. Now, I also, these were some thoughts that I had, that if anyone is waving a rifle anywhere in my vicinity, especially in some threatening manner that some guy at a protest would be doing, right? I would guarantee you I would at least have my hand on my pistol, whether and not brandishing it, or I'd be in code almost red,
yeah,
right?
Aaron,
So
good, very
so
good point. Go ahead. I'll
so
let you finish.
what? Because just because he wasn't pointing the rifle at him, okay, let me back up. Let's assume that he wasn't pointing the rifle at him. But a reasonable person could think, okay, I'm driving into this crowd and this guy's right next to me with the rifle. He could turn this on me any second. But, that is a very, very. So then you've got the fact the gentleman has, the unfortunate protester that got shot and killed. He has the opportunity, right? He has the ability,
The means.
the means, but in this instance, did he have the intent? How do you know whether he has the intent unless he actually points it right at you?
Or says, because
Yes,
I hope
says is
if he
that's a
says,
good
"I'm going to
point.
shoot you," that's intent, right?
Yeah.
So, so yeah, Aaron, I'm with you. I had those exact same thoughts.
So in other words, was he reasonable to think that
Exactly.
he reasonable? Was any other any other person in his shoes, would they have reasonably been in fear for their life, and he had to have what some may consider preemptive? But again, no one knows exactly what happened. I mean, unless there's some perfect video evidence of the actual shooting, what was going through anybody's mind. But like you
Well,
said,
yeah,
it's the
absolutely. We
evidence
don't
that
know.
can be admissible to the trial. So, again, it we have these cases, and sometimes people get acquitted when maybe they shouldn't have been, and they get found guilty when they shouldn't have been, because it's such a fine line. This is, depending on what you could dig into, other evidence, other video, etc., this still could be a fine line.
Yeah,
Who
and
knows?
I think that's where, when I did additional research, I started going, I don't know.
Yeah.
But what it does point towards, unfortunately, the evidence supports a possible conviction, or excuse
Yeah.
me, the evidence supports conviction in a reasonable jury's eyes is what I'm saying. I'm not saying I wouldn't necessarily
Beyond a reasonable
yeah,
doubt. Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely the point. Is we want to have our legal ducks in a row, such to the point that if we do go through an aftermath legal battle after a self-defense incident, that we put all of our best feet forward and be prepared both mentally and what we say and what we don't say. If we have our lawyers present, always have our lawyers present, you know?
So Eric, I think this is a good segue into some commentary on that then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Aaron, so let me say this real quick, and I'm going to breeze over this before I get to that piece. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, in big cities especially, you are more than likely to face a political prosecution. And again, I'm not saying this specific instance necessarily was politically.
Well, Eric, can we back that up a little
Yep.
bit? Maybe not more than likely, but more likely than we used to be. Is that a better way to put it?
Thank you. So, and this is, in my opinion, has a direct connection to rising crime in big cities, and that's that George Soros. You know, not to sound, I'm just going to say it, not to sound like Alex Jones. You know, but you know, George Soros has invested millions in these DA races. And, you know, I'm just, and again,
and that's 100% true.
Yep. Absolutely provable. And Aaron, I'm just going to say right out, I found multiple sources when I did some of this research. I mean, I could go on and on about sources, right? You know, anywhere from CNN to CBS and NPR. They're all there, but I did choose one that was from Fox News just because it served my purpose. And people can argue all day long, you know, if it's biased or not. But you know, if a stand-up news organization at least presents information, right? And this is, they had a guest on Fox and Friends, and essentially, quoting from the piece, George Soros funded DAs represent 20% of Americans after 40 million was funneled into races, reports find. Now, what that headline says is 20% of Americans are represented, meaning that
in their jurisdictions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Far left prosecutors funded by Soros include George Cascon, Larry Krasner, Alvin Bragg. Where does that name come up? With the current news of Donald Trump being charged felonies. Anyway, and Kim Fox, which is the prosecutor, or excuse me, DA in Cook County in Chicago. We know how well crime is doing in Chicago. Now, Aaron, I'm not going to go into a lot of this because I mean we've already spent quite a bit of time on the show already, but I'll just read a couple of statements. So this came from Matt Palumbo, who wrote the book "The Man Behind the Curtain," and so he's stating that he has had more than a 90% success rate in getting a lot of these DAs elected. Palumbo said on, told Todd Prio. Excuse me, I'm going to screw that up. That doesn't really matter. Quote, I hate to use the term brilliance with Soros, but one of the brilliant things he realized is when you want to get policy reform done with law and order, and in this case, degrading it, that's what going through a DA is so efficient because you do not have to go through state legislature. You don't have to go through a mayor. Palumbo penned an op-ed in the New York Post highlighted, how the 92-year-old poured millions to ensure key districts would have liberal prosecutors in order to further his agenda of remaking the country. So I'll just kind of end it there because there's no sense in spending a whole lot of time in this. But the point is that, you and I were talking pre-show. Why on earth would Soros put millions and millions and millions of dollars into these DAs and other political actions as well? I don't understand it other than it seems like he wants to create either chaos, a rise in crime. I'm not sure, Aaron, but one thing certain, we know that we just had, the UCR in 2020, 30% increase in murder. We know that's probably more upwards of 44 if you look at the CDC numbers and the Bureau of Justice Statistics, from our good buddy John Hearn stating that we have had a huge skyrocket in crime. And I would say that one of the causes is this right here, is that you got these DAs, Alvin, I'm going to mess it up. Alvin Bragg, I was about to screw that up. He should be, cemented in my brain right now. Aaron, to my understanding, he has reduced over 50%. And I'll have to look at the actual numbers. Over 50% of felony cases, he has reduced them to misdemeanors.
Yeah,
so,
I've read that too.
Yeah. So, and that's what Kim Fox has been doing. I don't know the percentage, but I mean, she's been reducing felony charges down to misdemeanors right and left. All these prosecutors and Aaron, that has a cause in increasing crime because you're letting out what could be violent criminals, or in many cases violent criminals.
Well, Eric, so this begs the question, and I started looking into it. So we've got George Soros and others, I'm sure, but he's just the most prominent that pours millions and millions and millions of dollars. He was born in Hungary. I think he moved to the United States in the 50s or 60s and became a major, he sounds like he was a major financial, genius, for lack of a better word. I don't like saying the word genius, but really great at finance and using financial instruments to make billions of dollars.
Yep.
But I'm not saying it's wrong legally, but I do wonder how so we have all these things and campaign finance reform, etc. That's kind of on the surface. You can't place certain types of commercials, etc., or any type of campaign ads a certain amount of time before an election. But then we have someone like this that can pour billions, let's just say over time, into literally remaking the legal system, the court systems overall in the United States, overturning
secretaries of state in state who are over state elections. He's invested millions in those races, or in some. I can't quote on how all secretaries of state are either appointed or voted in. I'm not going to comment on that, but he has absolutely invested money into getting the right secretaries of state in place as well, which has to do with voting.
This begs the question: who is the George Soros of the right? Remember, there was lots of talk in the, especially around the Bush era, of the Koch brothers, etc. You don't hear much about them anymore, but you would think, though, if there was a character like this that was funding billions and billions of dollars into conservative causes, right-leaning causes, or full right causes, it would be in the media all the time.
Yep.
Right. So it's just amazing that one person can affect so much in the entire country with money. It does seem like there would be some sort of limit on that.
Yeah, and I think the main thing is what's the reasoning behind it? What's his thought process on it? I, I'm I'm gonna look further into that. I have my thoughts on it. I'm not necessarily gonna say right now, just because again, you and I have to keep ourselves from going down the road of hyperbole.
Mhm.
Um,
We're having a conversation. We're
yep.
asking questions. We aren't experts, but we're intelligent people, and we can make observations, and we're looking for the truth. Whether that truth, I'm sure we would like the truth to match our beliefs or our expectations, but we also want to hear the truth, just like this case with Perry being convicted. Man, a lot of that stuff he pulled, man, that's not a
Yeah.
strong self defense case.
Yeah. At a minimum, he
At least
didn't.
from what I'm hearing.
At a minimum, he was not able to articulate his case well, and also to present the evidence. But here's the other thing: it is very likely, that I saw quotes from investigators, Aaron, detectives on the case that said that they didn't arrest him because he had a strong self-defense case,
Hmm.
or excuse me, he had a strong, I don't we use the wrong words. Essentially, the way they saw it is that it was a strong case of self-defense,
Bro,
right?
and that makes me think of this. One thing that is cool, and a shout out to you officers that respond to things like this. They certainly give the benefit of the doubt most of the time to people that are defending themselves, or at least on the surface defending themselves. It's when these things reach the grand jury, or reach the prosecutor or the DA, it's where it kind of turns around. But like you said, Eric, and then let's kind of comment real quick before we shut the show down on about at least our thoughts on how to interact with police, and it's definitely informed by our mentors too. Nothing new, but we're talking about our approach. I'm losing my train of thought here, bro. So why
Yeah,
don't you save me?
yeah. No, you're sounding
It'll
good to
come.
me, buddy.
It'll come to me here in a second.
Well, Aaron, what I would say is I'll start this next section with a comment about um, just recently going through the North Carolina concealed carry class. Now, my Washington State concealed carry is expiring, so I had to start the process. And I'm not going to lie, I was delaying going through it because I was hoping that North Carolina would go constitutional carry. There's been a bill, or multiple times that the bill has been submitted, but it just hadn't passed. So I was kind of holding out. But it's at the end of my license, so I've got to square that away. So I went through all the process. I will tell you this, man. It is North Carolina's got. It's not super hard, but I'm excuse me. You take a 8-hour class. You do a shooting test. I guess that's not that burdensome. But then you got to go to the sheriff's office. File the paperwork, and all this other thing. It just seems to me like, and some of the questions you got to answer, and just to me, man.
Bro, that sounds. I'll be honest, man. That sounds worse than when I filed for my SBR.
Well, and it may not be that bad, but
I'm just.
it's to me, I don't get that piece when it comes to concealed carry, man. Ultimately, I always stand on this. I believe that the Second Amendment is the concealed carry license. But in this case, the states when we look at it from federalism, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point. Good point.
You know, the 10th Amendment does allow states to make certain decisions, and, you know, they've done that. So that said, Aaron, excuse me, the good part about the North Carolina license is it's got reciprocity in a bunch of states. And especially with my work here, that is the good side of it. So the dichotomy of it is that if I held out for constitutional carry, I wouldn't have this license to be able to use reciprocity in a lot of these other states. So that is an argument for concealed carry. And there's been folks that have argued that having a concealed carry could possibly help you in court too, that you've went through the process rather than just, you know, carrying constitutionally, which again, that's what I prefer. But anyway, Aaron, one of the things this class did seem to be a USCCA commercial, which and I'm sure there were some people like, man, got to sit here and listen to this. But Aaron, I will tell you that I'm not a member of USCCA, but I will say that they seem to be encouraging a lot of new people to get involved. And at a minimum, when this regional director, I was impressed with this guy. Man, he was.
And is he the one that was teaching your class, or did he come in and give a talk?
He came in to do a talk, you know, which I think is kind of the arrangement that the USCCA does with a lot of these classes, you know, especially the instructors themselves were USCCA instructors themselves. Now, this guy just made a very he used multiple self-defense stories that were very compelling. And, you know, because USCCA does help with aftermath legal assistance, right? So I would much rather a person join USCCA than not, right? I have nothing against USCCA. I'm not saying that at all. You know, I'm a member of the American Citizens Legal Defense Network myself, and that's what I prefer. But, you know, at least I would rather see people have some kind of assistance. But the point is, Aaron, I saw all these people in there that came to this class. A lot of them probably never really thought about any of this stuff, that I saw them sign up to be USCCA, and at least they've got that to fall on. So one of the things, and we'll start to close out. One of the things that the regional director said that was something I'm like, man, I should probably do that. Now, I'm going to say that I would like to know Andrew Branca's thought process on whether or not there's any kind of possible legal ramifications of doing this. But I'll just say on the air, because this is discovery, right? Is that he suggested I guess they have a card that has the 911 statement that you would say, because you're going to be nervous, so on and so forth. And I thought, man, you know, that's probably not a bad idea. I want to explore. So I thought I'd bring that up on the air. Now, I will tell you that in the law of self-defense, Andrew Branca's book, again, I'm going to put it in the show notes. Folks, get this book, because you're going to learn so much about self-defense law, what you can and cannot do, you know, shooting people over properties and no, all these things. But I think a really good section here is what to say after an incident. When number one, you should be racing to get to 911 call, because our mentors and folks we've learned from say that, you know, the first person that calls 911 is already looking better in the eyes of their case, right? But, you know, there's a lot of people that say, don't say anything. Well, Andrew Branca recommends the say little approach. And
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I like it. So, and really, you're going to have 3 interactions, right? You're going to have the 911 call. Again, Aaron, why would we want a proper statement on 911.
Because it will be, if you do end up in a legal hearing or any such legal proceedings, it's going to be used in that instance.
Bingo. Exactly. It will be used in evidence. So you want to say the right thing. Um, and also, law enforcement's going to arrive at the location, right? So you want to say the right thing to them. And then investigators are going to get involved. So the say little approach. And that's, I've got on this card now, because I'm at least gonna carry this around for now until I find out otherwise.
Ponder it, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna send Andrew a message. And again, we've been meaning to have him back on the show. Maybe this is something we should even bring up on the air to talk about. But anyway, I'm gonna bring it up now because it is something I'm pondering on. So you want to obviously state your name when you call 911. You're gonna tell them your location, right? You're going to say these 3 statements. I was attacked. I was in fear for my life. I had to defend myself. You're then going to request law enforcement and an ambulance, right? And, bring them here as soon as possible. And that's all you're going to say at that point, right? When law enforcement comes there, because they're going to come and try to, they're going to talk to you, try to get information from you, you're going to say the same thing. Your name, you were attacked, I was in fear for my life or my family, I had to defend myself. Then you're going to identify exculpatory evidence, a knife, a gun, witnesses,
shell casings, witnesses. Yeah.
Witnesses. Yeah. Like it, I fired this many shots, but if they can't find the shell casing, some prosecutor's going to say, hey,
Yes, that's a good point. Don't try and count how many shots you shot, especially that, because you can misremember, and that can be a problem.
Yep. And so you definitely want to point out witnesses. Again, this Daniel Perry, if he would have happened to have had witnesses that he could point out that saw what happened, that could corroborate his story, he would have been in a better light. So, and then at this point, this is important. Once you've pointed out evidence, you request medical attention.
Yeah.
And then you say the magic words, to use Andrew's words. I assert my right to silence. I assert my right to counsel. And that's it, right? And then when investigators come talk to you, the only thing you say to them are those two statements. I assert my right to silence, and I assert my right to counsel. And then tell your lawyers there you don't say another word. So, well, man, I hope this last portion wasn't too deep, but I kind of like this idea. But again, I wanna know Andrew's thought on it, which I'm definitely gonna close the loop on. But at a minimum, Aaron, just we talk about this all the time. The very fact that I wrote this down on this card,
parking spot.
Yep, exactly.
You've thought about it. Maybe if you don't do it perfectly, you still do a lot better job than making it up right after you've had to use lethal force and you're winging it when police arrive.
Well, Aaron, and I will say this, you and I have rehearsed these types of statements, right? And incidentally, in this case, that USCCA representative asked the whole room, has anybody ever considered what they would say? And I raised my hand, and he called me out, and I essentially said something very similar to this, not perfect, but I'll just say on the air that you could. He said, "Man, I'm impressed that you clearly have thought this through." Not fluffing my own ego up, but the point is most people don't think about those things. So, well, Aaron, I think we kind of used up our audience members' time. I've had a lot of fun, Aaron.
Yeah, a lot of fun. We aren't joking when we get on here and we say, "Hey, I was looking forward to getting together and hanging out," because I kind of needed it after a day. I didn't have a bad day or anything, but just kind of a hectic day, and we hadn't got to do this in a while, and it's
Well,
always fun.
and we
If
talked about gear, and we talked about
beer,
mindset. We talked about beer too. And we talked about mindset. You
mhm.
know, that's why we coined these host only shows, the gear and mindset show, because that we like to talk about those things that, we like to talk about gear, but we also like to talk about mindset, and hopefully folks
Hey,
still enjoy it.
here's all the gear I have for this week.
Oh yeah, man, I love that orange.
Yeah,
I bet you Dr. Sherman House would like that color.
I bet he would too, but I'll tell you, Aaron Davis loves this color now because, you know, I lost. This is my favorite model of knife. It's the Spyderco Dragonfly 2. Man, it's small enough to fit in your pocket real nice, but large enough to get some work done. Man, I lost it was a camouflage one. I lost it at a class we taught. And I just had to replace this, and instead of getting the camo one, but okay, this orange, I should see this on the table when I pack up my gear from teaching or just hitting the range, right?
Yeah, cool. Sorry you lost it, but I like your new one.
Cool.
Well, bro, let's give the audience their time, and I'll give you yours, man. It's been great talking with you, man. As
All right, bro.
always,
Good night.
have a good one.
You're the one